Running a business comes with a lot of what ifs, but luckily there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Welcome to the High Volume Hiring Podcast. I'm Stephen Rothberg, the founder of College Recruiter job search site. At College Recruiter, we believe that every student and recent grad deserves a great career. This podcast features news, tips, case studies, and interviews with the world's leading experts about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to high volume hiring. Thanks for joining us. Today's guest is Kevin Grossman, president of the Talent Board, a nonprofit organization focused on the elevation and promotion of a quality candidate experience. The organization, its Candidate Experience Awards program, and its sponsors are dedicated to recognizing the candidate experience offered by employers throughout the entire recruitment cycle and to forever changing the manner in which job candidates are treated. As a bit of an aside, I was a committee member and judge the first couple of years of the Candies. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Stephen, thanks for having me. Great to see you.
It's good to see you as well. It's been a few years. I think there have been a couple things that have happened that maybe have prevented us from being in the same room at the same time.
That pesky pandemic, right?
Yeah. Well, it's. I think we can just all agree it's your fault and then just move on.
Sure.
It's that. Some people have a vegan diet, and some people are just like they can't get enough chicken. And I guess it's possible that you're the person who was eating bats, but whatever. I don't know where that's coming from.
That's why I started drumming, Stephen. So there you go.
Exactly. Yes. Your family, your wife and daughters must be extremely tolerant to have an aspiring drummer in the family.
Uh-huh.
I think when we first met years ago, you were leading HR marketer and doing a lot of its marketing work. Yeah, it's like, whoa, HR marketer, that's a blast from your past. If I'm not mistaken, and I often am, so set me straight, that work the past couple of decades, or your work over the last couple of decades, it's almost always seemed in my mind to be sort of at that intersection of marketing and HR tech. Is that a fair thing to say?
For the most part. I mean, I've been in the HR recruiting technology space for over 23 years, and that's been the bulk of it, is primarily on that side. I always like to joke that I play HR and recruiting on TV. But I've always loved the space. And when I first came into the space, there was a startup that I worked for in Santa Cruz, actually, that was focused on helping to match. We had our own secret sauce algorithm, matching candidates to jobs. This was the .com heyday before the bust. And I did some kind of ad hoc recruiting and sourcing on behalf of some of our customers because we leverage our technology, but we still had human interaction. And I really fell in love with recruiting because prior to that, I had been in high tech marketing communications, but nothing really to do with recruiting and hiring, not directly. And ever since, I've loved the space. And so when I had the opportunity to run Talent Board, I was jumped at the chance because it got me closer to working with the talent acquisition side with practitioners and to do the research that we do. And that's why I have loved doing that to date.
Yeah. I remember hearing that you were going to be leading the Talent Board, and it was like, okay, whoever created this short list and then probably had you at the top of that short list, really good recruiter.
Well, it's funny. I'll give
logical.
I'll give credit to that recruiter because I was also involved early on, just as you were. I was one of the early volunteers. As you remember, it was very volunteer driven. It was always a data driven process. The judge process that you referenced was when we got to. There was a judging aspect to it when we got to judge the winners on who had the most the best story, basically. So that was that process. Ever since we've done less of that, we focused more on case studies, but it's still very data driven. But the recruiter was Elaine Orler, actually. She's the one that recruited me. And then getting to know Jerry Moore, which I did back then, and then Ed Newman, who all three of them started Talent Board. But Elaine's the one that recruited me. Yeah.
Well, so my suspicion about somebody being really good who picked you, spot on. I didn't realize it was Elaine, but that doesn't. Yeah. That if I had known it was Elaine, it was like, okay, yeah, that makes total sense. She's a total rock star.
Absolutely.
So, question for you: when you're thinking about the world of hourly workers, particularly in high volume kinds of roles, hospitality, retail, call center, warehouse, etc. What would you say the state of the candidate experience is right now?
It is, I would argue, counterintuitive to I think what most people would think, especially what happened in year one of the pandemic when a lot of people were laid off of work during the first year of the pandemic, and those industries, hospitality, retail, airlines, were decimated, right? For a while. But what we found, interestingly enough, is that the higher positive candidate sentiment and perception of fairness is much higher with hourly candidates than with professional or management. Management's actually got some of the lowest positive marks overall. Now, there's a lot of things to unpack, though, right? Because we can't control for all the variables in our data and research, but I do know that with more seniority in when it comes to with certain job roles, there's more hoops to jump through. There's more complexity. People who have been in the workforce a lot longer, we don't measure cynicism, but I mean, there's some of that boils in. But what's interesting, though, what we've been starting to look at more, and I'm hoping that it comes out in the end of year's research reports from the 2022 benchmark that we're still gathering data for. But what we're finding is that technology actually has played a bigger role in improving the candidate experience for high volume hiring than maybe even what we'd think. And let me be specific about that. So we know that texting today has a much higher deliverability when it comes to people, period, job candidates in particular, not only notifying candidates of jobs, but telling them what's going to happen next. If they're in process, they can apply on their mobile devices. In fact, a lot of these candidates don't maybe even barely use email, right? Depending on the industry, right. In manufacturing and many other industries, they're all on their devices. Texting is the way to reach them. So companies that have been, and we've seen an increase in texting on the employer side. Candidates prefer that. I think hourly candidates and high volume candidates totally prefer that. And it actually we've seen a spike in positive sentiment. Here's the thing. Most of the candidates in our research, regardless of job type, they don't get hired. That's the reality of real life. For any given job, most don't get the job. But when there's more engagement and communication that's consistent, even if it's not a human, we all want to talk to humans. Don't get me wrong. But you know this too, better than anybody, that there's not a lot of human interaction at all for any high volume at the point of application. They're just not. That's mostly automated.
Basically zero. Yeah.
It's zero, right? But if there is engagement and communication, even if it's automated, it makes a difference, because before there was just a void of nothing anyway. It's just the black hole, and email deliverability is harder anyway every year because of those things that we just pointed out. So texting, chatbots, especially those that have more conversational AI that are learning and getting better at answering questions for candidates, not only on the career site, but throughout the application process, even into scheduling interviews now. It's much more pervasive. So we're starting to take a look at that more. It's not a direct correlation, but there's a relationship there. When there is more consistent engagement and communication, it's a better experience. And what's interesting is that we also measure what we call the resentment rate. So the percentage of candidates who say, I will never do anything with you again because I had a crappy time. It's much lower for hourly. Even this year than all candidates together in the data that we have so far. And we're on our way to probably another 200,000 responses this year, just for this year's data set globally, most of North America, but globally as well. So it's fascinating that to see that they say that it's much more positive, and their perception of fairness is higher than professional hires and then management hires.
So let me dig into that because it's fascinating. You started off by saying it was counterintuitive for many. Definitely, I'm in that group. I'm shocked and happy all at the same time. Um, I'm far more concerned about the millions and millions and millions of hourly workers than I are the handful of CEOs who might have
Oh
been
yeah, I
pissed
agree
off
with
by an
you
application
wholeheartedly.
process, right?
Wholeheartedly.
They can take care of themselves, and they're a higher sought after commodity, and they'll be just fine. But people who are struggling to find work, I think organizations, when they're focusing on kind of how do we improve our systems, how do we improve our communication, you can impact a lot more people when you're impacting your hourly than your top management. But question for you, do you think that the resentment and the satisfaction being higher amongst the hourly workers, is it because, do you think that they're being treated better? Is it that their expectations are lower? Where do you think it's coming from?
It's a little bit of all the above, right? Because like I told you just a few minutes ago, there's too many variables that we can't even account for, even in our data, and we only ask so many questions. I mean, if I could ask hundreds of questions of the candidates, I would, but then we would never get a survey answered, right? So it's always been a balance, and we do ask a lot of questions. They only answer as far as they got in the process, though. It's all logic driven by their experience in our data and research. But so I think it's all of those things. I think definitely expectations are much different at maybe entry level positions, people that are new to the workforce, hourly positions that are not necessarily high skilled. I don't know how else to put that, but I mean, that are lower barriers to entry. I mean, there's a lot of things that do make a difference. Expectations are definitely one, right? And the process, as I would argue, as it should be, for candidates, is to streamline. The least glamorous part of recruiting and hiring is applying for a freaking job. That is just, it is painful. No matter what ATS you have, no matter what you've done with it, you could have collapsed it a lot. And companies have done that. I mean, we've seen a big surge in getting it under 15 minutes, not counting an assessment, if you're going to do that too.
Right.
So I think that there's a lot of factors that are involved, that just as you mentioned, but expectations are definitely one. But I mean, what we find is that, again, I think it's they're getting, technology's helping to keep shuffling them along and not falling through the cracks as much. I mean, there's still the whole thing about the black hole, and I never heard back. That happens a lot, unfortunately. And in fact, there's still a good clip of candidates, and we're still looking at the data this year, that after 2 months still haven't heard back from the company after they applied. And it's like upwards of 50%-ish. And I mean, that's, and this is why we argue, especially for, I would argue, any level of job type, but for high volume hiring, if out of the gate, if people are not qualified, if they truly are not, whether you're auto screening them or there's an actual human looking at them, if they're not qualified, tell them within 1 to 2 weeks, period.
What happens when employees behave badly? Boy, we could do an entire TV show, maybe a Netflix special on that. Well, Ryan and I sat down and recorded episodes for FAMA, and we asked practitioners, give us your most outrageous story. The sales leader that brings cocaine to work, whatever. Just bring us the outrageous, and it is funny. So if you need a laugh, which we all do from time to time, search for Workplace Misconduct wherever you get your podcast, and you'll find it. And trust me, you will laugh and cry, but you'll definitely laugh. All right. Thank you.
At College Recruiter, there's a customer of ours that, for they're an intelligence agency, and for security clearance reasons, you have to be a U.S. citizen to work for them. So one of their questions in their application process is, "What are you a citizen of the United States? Yes, no." So if it's a no, something clear like that, that under no circumstances can we ever hire you, you should just tell the person, like right then and there, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And you would also hope that those people would self-select if they, I mean, and they don't always do that either, but you should definitely tell them. And what happens is that I find this again and again, no matter how long we've done this work, there's too many employers that have a culture of especially of their hiring managers too, that let's wait until we fill the rec, and then we'll let everybody go, even if it's evergreen hiring, even if it's ongoing high volume. And the issue is that sometimes, and those are usually faster too, depending on if I'm hiring at the store level or a plant, or there's variance there. But let them know, don't hold on to them, because that can be, weeks later, and it doesn't make any sense. These folks, if they're not qualified out of the gate for your job, they're not going to magically change in a couple of weeks. It's just not how it works, right? And if they do have something, then those are the people that you are screening, assessing, maybe moving along further, and that's great. But if they're not at all, then just let them know. Too soon is too soon as well. Don't have it set so if you're auto screening and they apply and a minute later they get a rejection, don't do that either. Give it a little breathing room. Give it a day. You can set the dials. This is what I've been spouting now for the past couple of years, is that employers, you all control the dials. You may not be happy with some of your recruiting tech stack. That's not the point, though. You still control the dials of what you're saying to candidates, when you're saying it, with what frequency, and how the systems and how they work. You control those things. So why are you still letting that same autoresponder that was out of the box that says, "Thank you for your interest, we'll be in touch if you're qualified"? You can do better than that. It doesn't take that much work. And I just did a webinar with a few hundred people yesterday that I was asking. I always ask everybody this, from workshops to whatever: how many of you apply for your own jobs? And this was still about less than 50% said that they did. And I'm like, this is a perfect opportunity. You don't have to do it every month, week, or maybe once or twice a year. If you implemented a new ATS or system, do it after that too. Just walk through the process, apply for a job, feel what it's like. This is what we're making candidates do, especially for even high volume. If you're doing constantly a lot of churn, and you don't want to lose potentially qualified folks because they're like, "I'm out," because you're making me create an account, upload a resume, then refill out the same friggin' places that I just loaded. I mean, so I think those are, but the employers do. You control the dials.
Yeah. It reminds me, and not to go way into a tangent or anything, it reminds me years ago, there was a national restaurant that was advertising part-time delivery drivers with us. And they were complaining that thousands of people were going to the position on their ATS, and they had like 6 applications. It was just like an absolutely atrocious conversion rate.
Wow.
And couple questions that we'll typically ask when we see things like that is like, is it unusual that you're seeing that kind of result from College Recruiter? Are we the outlier? Like, are all of your other sources good and we're bad? Well, that tells us something. Or are you seeing it across the board? It's like, no, we're seeing it across the board, but your audience should convert really well, blah, blah, blah. Fair enough. So we tested the application process. Part-time delivery drivers. So, what do you really need to know about that person? It was a 40-minute application process. It was the same process as if they were hiring like a chief operating officer. I heard secondhand, I'm going to have to go look at it. I've heard that they're now down to 3 minutes. It's like driving for Uber. How long does it take you to apply? That's their competition. And so that's what they've done. And I'm sure there are loads of questions that they need to have answered after. If they decide to hire you, what's your social security number, right? They need that, but they don't need that and really shouldn't be gathering that on the front end.
No, God, I was just talking to somebody else about that yesterday. And I'm telling you, when our daughters start actually applying for jobs, which now they're a tween and teen, Wow, that's an amazing journey. And at some point they will, if that crap is asked for, they will never work for those places.
Right.
Like ever. You do not ask for their social security number or their, you just don't. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So
At that point.
don't do it. And at that
right.
point, oh no,
Yeah.
no, right, that's different. And because if they're getting the job, then that's a different scenario of information that I need. But one of the things somebody just reminded me of yesterday too is that I've been, touting for so long, make it an easier process, streamline it for candidates, make it easier to get in the front door, and then do your own whatever, how you screen, assess, whatever. But you still got to be compliant.
Yeah.
Because the EEOC will come a knocking
Yep.
on your door if you don't. So you can't you just can't compromise. So I love that we're all about a better candidate experience, but you still got to be compliant.
Right. And also just to add a little color to that too, don't blame choices that create a bad candidate experience on compliance when it's really not. Things like changing the autoresponder in your ATS. First of all, having it on so that, gosh, you tell people that they applied and we got it. And then when I was one of the judges, I think it was year 2 of the Candies, and I think it was Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I was struck by how candid and forthright they were about the process that candidates were going to go through. And it was something, I'm just making up the days, but it was something like within 10 days, you're going to hear back from a recruiter. And if you go to the next step, then that's going to be, at most another 7 days. And then if you go to the next step, that's going to be at most another 14 days. And here's our process. And I've talked to employer after employer after employer about that. I see more of them doing that, a pledge, outlining candidly, transparently what their process is. And the ones that resist, the typical response is, well, what if we don't get back to them within the promised 5 days? It's like, okay, you're missing the point. What you do is that you say, what's the most amount of time it could possibly take for us to get back to this person at this
and
step?
then you over-deliver.
Right? And then, so if it's 7 days, you promise 9, so that you're always going to be a hero. And if there's an outlier case, a meteor strikes your city, then fine. Email the person, apologize. I just did that today with somebody. I was supposed to send something to somebody today, and it's not going to be today. So I told them, hey, it's going to be Monday. And they're like, cool, thanks.
Yeah. Just it's about expectation setting. And so companies that I can tell you that we something else that we're diving into, and we're actually going to start writing it up this month and release it when we announce the Candy winners in mid-September. But we were looking at the best place, the 100 best companies to work for. It's a great list, right? I mean, the work that Great Place to Work does and Fortune, it's a great methodology. They do a lot of really good research around it, employee experience feedback, all this good stuff. A question that we came up, and it was actually a discussion that I had with our current board, so Jerry Crispin, Ed Newman, and Debbie McGrath from HR.com, and we're like, and the question came up, technically, if those are the 100 best places to work for, they should have a good, positive candidate experience. I mean, that's the hypothesis.
Yep. Certainly a high correlation.
So, yeah. I mean, it should be. And so what we're doing is that we're doing our own review of those companies, but just at the point of research and application, not beyond that. So because we can't assess with screening, interviewing, because we're not going to get an interview. We're just looking at, based on what we know candidates want and what the highest rated companies in our research are doing, we have a checklist. And so we're going through, and then we're going to release those results. And there's some interesting things that we're finding is that not everybody does on the front end. But many do still, and that's good. That's what we were hoping to see. So this wasn't supposed to be a gotcha moment, but it was professional curiosity. So we're going to release those results in September for everybody to check out.
Awesome. And just before we close, I'll just add my 2 cents for the gotcha reference. One of the things that I have always loved about the Candies is that it's part of the DNA to use a carrot, not stick approach. You're not calling companies out and saying, what a terrible experience, or you are awful in this area and blah, blah, blah,
Correct.
right? And the Glassdoors of the world are very good at doing that. And there's a place for that if that's what the candidate wants to see. At times, employers are going to be receptive to that kind of criticism. But the Candy approach was always much more on the let's celebrate the successes, let's show what's possible, let's aspire to be better rather than beating people up for not being bad. So employers who haven't been a part of the process, I would definitely encourage. It is really, really informative to have an outside group come in and say, here's what you're doing, here's how it benchmarks against others, here's how you can get better. So in that vein, so Kevin, if people want to learn more about the talent board, the candies, your drumming skills, how should they contact you?
Either connect with me on LinkedIn and go visit thetalentboard.org. And tons of resources that are available on our site about what we do and our mission of elevating and promoting a quality candidate experience.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you for joining us today on the High Volume Hiring Podcast, a co-production of Evergreen Podcasts and College Recruiter. Please subscribe for free on your favorite app. Review it. 5 stars are always nice, and recommend it to a couple people you know who want to learn more about how best to hire dozens or even hundreds of people. A special thanks to our producer and engineer, Ian Douglas. I'm your host, Stephen Rothberg, of job search site College Recruiter. Each year, we help more than 7 million candidates find great new jobs. Our customers are primarily Fortune 1000 companies, government agencies, and other employers who hire at scale and advertise their jobs with us. You can reach me at stephen@collegerecruiter.com. Cheers.